Hello and welcome to this video all about why you might fail in your journey to become a programmer. Now, in the last year, around 2 million people in the United States alone have tried to learn how to become a programmer, tried to learn how to program, and only about 10% of those, about 200,000 of those people, actually learned enough skills and went out and were able to find a job. So only about 10% of people right now are succeeding when they try to learn how to program. And in my personal opinion, this doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. This doesn't have anything to do with your math skills. This doesn't have anything to do with how smart you are or anything like that. And it's not that those people who failed were incapable of learning the skills, were incapable of finding a job. It's not that there weren't jobs for those people to fill. There's definitely still tons and tons of demand for new programmers and not enough programmers to fill that demand. And for the most part, I feel like at least half of those people who failed to learn to program could have avoided it if they had taken a different approach. So I think the number one thing leading to people failing to learn how to program is the approach that they take. And we're going to go into a lot more detail about what I mean when I say that. And we're also going to talk about how you can succeed in your journey to learn how to program after we talk about why you might fail if you take the wrong approach. So with that said, the first reason that a lot of people fail is just because they pick irrelevant skills. So it's very easy to go out there and find, what's a really popular programming language? What's a really, high-paying programming language? And then go learn that, and then find out later that there is no job demand for whatever you just learned about in your area, and then that skill is completely useless. And that is definitely one of the major things that happens. This is actually what happened to me when I started learning how to program. I learned about Python and Django, which at the time was touted as this really popular thing a lot of people were using. And then when I went and looked for a job, there was no one hiring for Django at all. And people who were hiring for Python weren't looking for any of the skills that I had picked up. And at that point, I was ready to throw in the towel. I'd spent probably 6 months learning how to do this, building up my projects. I was ready to start working. And then I found out the skills I learned were totally useless in the job market. And that leads really nicely into this next point, which is the only reason why I didn't fail to learn how to program, which is that I didn't give up. So the next main thing that causes people to fail is that they give up. So even if you pick an irrelevant skill, if you don't give up, if you then go find a relevant skill, you'll probably be just fine. But the main thing here is, if you give up, obviously you're going to fail. And the problem is that people start to feel like, if I picked an irrelevant skill, for instance, then I've wasted all of this time. Who knows if spending more time on it is going to be worth it? And that's why I put picking an irrelevant skill at the top, because that is the number one thing. If you only watch the first minute or so of this video, I want you to know that picking a relevant skill is super important. You really can't, just go pick anything and then expect to be able to find a job. You need to look at the job market. And then if you do fall down, then you really just can't give up. So giving up is just a really easy thing to do. You're definitely going to run into problems when you're learning how to program, and you can easily just give up when you run into those problems and say, I can't figure this out. Well, I'll never be able to do this. Well, this is taking too much time. Or give yourself any list of reasons why you should give up, why this isn't going to work for you, why this isn't right for you. And if you do that, if you do give up, then you're going to fail. I mean, that's basically what giving up leads to 100% of the time. Ultimately, I don't think that it actually has anything to do with you. I don't think that anyone who did give up would have not been able to make it if they didn't give up. I think that giving up was really the main problem in and of itself. Now, another thing that also kind of leads to this giving up or feeling like you can't make it, and subsequently leads to you failing to learn how to code, is that you don't set expectations. So if you don't set any expectations for yourself, if you don't set goals, if you don't have some idea of what you want to learn and how quickly you want to learn it, then it's very easy to feel like, oh, well, it's been 6 months and I still don't know as much as I was expecting to know by now, when you didn't have a plan for how much you should have known and how quickly you should be accumulating that information. So setting no expectations is definitely a really easy way to fall off track, because if there's no track at all, you're bound to just kind of wander in circles and then, wonder why you never got to your destination. Now, on the other hand, setting unrealistic expectations can be almost worse, because at that point you can feel like you're falling short. Like if you set this need to learn in the next month, you want to learn everything that you needed to learn, then a month from now you're going to feel like, oh, well, I blew it. And then it can be really easy to give up because you feel like, well, I couldn't learn it that fast, so I must not be good enough at this or something like that. And on the other hand, especially when it comes to software development and programming, the need to learn too much can be a really huge issue because there is so much to learn. There is so much to learn about programming that there is nobody on the earth who knows all of it. And when you start learning it, you kind of feel like, oh, well, I need to know everything before I go and try to find a job, before I go and try to build a project, before I go and try to set up a portfolio. I need to learn everything. And when you kind of put yourself in that position, it can be really overwhelming, because as you're learning a couple of things here and there, you start to realize just how much more there is to learn about each one of the topics you're learning about. And it's really literally impossible for you to learn everything. So trying to tell yourself that you need to learn too much and setting that unrealistic expectation is a fast track again to giving up. And with that in mind, with this idea that there is just an impossible amount of information and that you'll never learn it all, which is okay, you don't have to learn it all, the next thing that leads people to fail is expecting to kind of finish eventually. People have this idea in their head that oh, well, once I learn it, then I'll know it and I'll be done. But that's just not how things work in the software development industry. There's always new technologies coming out, there's always new tools coming out, and even the tools that you do learn about are going to continue to put out new features for those tools, and you're going to have to keep learning about them for your entire career. I've been working as a programmer for years, and every single year I learn a bunch of new stuff because all of the technologies I work with keep evolving and getting more powerful, and also I continue to work with new technologies that I've never worked with before and learn new stuff in that way as well. And another thing that causes people to fail to learn is just getting caught in that kind of cycle of endless tutorials and just never passing that tutorial step. So at a certain point, if you don't actually go out and build anything, then it doesn't matter how much you learn, because you could learn everything in the book. Well, you can't learn everything in the book, but you could learn as much as you need to and then still find yourself, well, I could learn a little more. I could learn a little more. I could learn a little more, and watching so many tutorials and learning so much stuff. But if you never actually put it into action, if you don't actually build anything, set up a portfolio, set up your resume, apply for jobs, nobody's going to walk up to you on the street and be like, oh, I saw that you took all these tutorials, let me give you a job. It's just not going to happen like that. You have to take that initiative to go out and build something, and you have to have that idea in your head that whatever you build is probably not going to become a business opportunity. You're probably not going to make any money for that project that you build, but what you build will show that you have the abilities that you need to go out and get a job. And it'll show that potential employer that you're worth hiring because you were able to build something. So now that we talked about why you might fail to learn how to program, let's talk about the bright side of this. And it is pretty much going to be just a flip of everything we just talked about. But let's talk about how you can successfully learn coding. So obviously the very first one here is going to be pick relevant skills. So we talked about how picking irrelevant skills can make things really hard for you, make it really easy to give up. But picking relevant skills really comes down to looking at your job market, looking at what there is demand for, and then focusing on actual marketable skills. So looking for some kind of technology stack, languages, frameworks that there are job postings near you for, so that you can actually apply to them and say, oh yeah, I did learn this technology, this specific technology that all those employers are asking about, instead of learning something like Django for Python and then going out there and finding like 3 jobs that people with 20 years of experience are applying for, and you probably have no chance. So definitely look at your job market before you do anything, before you learn your first language, because you could very easily learn something that is totally useless if you don't look ahead of time and make sure that those skills are relevant. So that number one first step that you want to take to successfully learn how to program is going to be to go and pick relevant skills. So if you pick relevant skills off the bat, or even if you're already learning about something and you go and look at the job market and find out that what you're learning is useless, to go and change your approach to look at something that there is demand for in the job market is going to be the number one most important thing you can do to successfully learn how to program instead of setting yourself up for failure. So just like we talked about giving up, the flip side of that, of course, is going to be keep trying. So one of the other most important things you can do is to keep trying. And if you stop the video right now, or if you only watched the last 45 seconds of this video, that would be really all you need to know. And at the end of the day, if you pick relevant skills and you keep trying, you will eventually succeed. At least 99% of you will eventually succeed as long as you pick relevant skills and keep trying. Now, there is a minority here. There's like 5% of people who want to learn how to program that don't like computers, don't like to type, don't want to sit at a desk all day. And to those people, I say, this isn't the right job for you anyway, and you're setting yourself up for failure by just trying to do it. Now, I understand there's like the allure of how much money you can make, but if you're not going to enjoy the job, you're going to fail because of that as well. And that is definitely an important thing to consider, whether, learning to program is even right for you in the first place. But I think there's a relatively small amount of people who try to learn how to program when it's really just a bad decision for them. For most of us, if we pick relevant skills and keep trying, then we will succeed and we'll have that career we want and that we can really enjoy. Now, the next thing we talked about was expectations, and the best way we can handle this is to set realistic expectations. To set expectations in the first place, of course, but also to make sure that those expectations are realistic. So make sure that you set the expectation that will give you the ability to take your time. You don't want to set an expectation that you're going to learn everything there is to know about JavaScript in the next 2 days, because even if you did manage to do that, your brain is just not capable of holding on to that much information. And you'll basically wind up losing all of that information in the next 2 days and then beating yourself up about why you don't remember anything. So ultimately, making sure that you set realistic expectations, that you take your time when you're learning to actually learn the thing, rather than to kind of race to the finish line where you'll then find yourself struggling to remember everything you learned, is definitely really important. And I would say that for most people, it takes at least 3 months to learn like the basics, like the basic building blocks that you need at the very least. And it takes about 6 months at least to build your portfolio, get some practice on projects, start applying for jobs before you can actually find a job. Like I've seen very few people come in and from the time they started learning to the time they got their first job, it was less than 6 months. So you can take that as you will. I think that's still a lot faster than a lot of other career options, and the end result pays a lot more, and it's a much more enjoyable job than a lot of other career options. But that's just my 2 cents. It is a lot of hard work for 6 months before you actually get that job. And that is another reason, really, why a lot of people will fail, because they'll say, oh, well, this is going to take too long. Oh, well, I've already spent, 2 months trying to do this and I'm not far enough along. And again, if you just take your time and, pick relevant skills and keep trying, you'll definitely get there eventually. But I would say 6 months is like a bare minimum for most people. If you're like super smart or something, you might do it in 3 or 4 months. but 6 months I think is a reasonable expectation if you are starting from nothing. And again, if you don't get there in 6 months, I wouldn't beat yourself up. A lot of people are not spending like full-time hours learning how to program. They're like learning after work and stuff like that. And in that situation, it can definitely take a little bit longer. And I just wouldn't beat yourself up. Just keep trying if you don't get there in 6 months. And another thing that people will do when they're trying to set these expectations for themselves, set these goals, is try to learn too many things at the same time. Like, it definitely makes sense that you want to learn about a bunch of different stuff. I mean, at the very least, you want to learn at least about GitHub and LinkedIn and one programming language and one framework to work with within that language, and even just those 4 things. Like, you can't learn them all at the same time. So when you're starting out, I would definitely say focus on the programming language and then the framework or tool you're going to work with using that programming language. Like, you don't want to also be intermingling a bunch of other information at the same time unless it's starting to become relevant. So if you're like in the middle of learning about one programming language and then you want to start building your first project, that's something that can be added kind of on the side and combined. And then once you're working on that project, you might want to put it on GitHub, and that can be kind of lumped in there. So I'm not saying don't continue to add new things here and there, just don't expect to learn them all at once and super quickly, because you want to make sure that your expectations are, again, realistic. And if you don't take your time and you try to learn too much too fast, it's very possible that you're going to wind up forgetting a lot of what you learned because your brain just can't handle so much new information all at once. It needs time to process that information and to consolidate that information into long-term memory. Another important thing to keep in mind if you want to succeed at learning to program is that there will always be more to learn. There's never going to be a time when you're like, okay, I've learned it all. I did it. I have all the information I need. I can stop learning now. It just doesn't happen in programming. You're bound to get a new project working with a new technology that you've never worked with before. You're bound to see the technologies you're working with already evolve and pick up new features and changes that you need to adapt to. And so there is never a time when you're done learning. You're always going to need to learn more if you want to work as a programmer. And finally, if you want to succeed, you have to at some point start building stuff. So if you never actually build anything, it again does not matter what you learn, because building the stuff, putting something on GitHub for a potential employer to look at, where they can actually see your code, where they can actually see that you can, start a project and make it useful enough to use, that is going to be the number one most important thing that will get you hired. And so if you don't build anything, you probably won't get hired no matter how much you learn. So you have to build something. You have to get out there and actually get practice. Even if it's not professional practice, you probably won't get paid for it. I do have some ideas of things that you could do to maximize the effect of the things you build and even potentially get paid for it initially in some situations, but that is an idea for another video. But you have to build something. So just keep that in mind, and the sooner the better. So even if it turns out that you wind up needing to tear down your whole project and rebuild it at some point, that's fine, and it even shows the initiative and the ability to evolve and work with different technologies. So it's not a bad thing if you have to tear down your project and rebuild it. So just keep that in mind. If you've only, learned a couple of basic things, you could still start trying to build something useful out of those things. And even if it doesn't amount to anything, just the fact that you took the initiative to start building something is going to mean a whole lot, when even if it's like 2 or 3 months from now, when you've learned a full framework and start building something completely different, that 2 or 3 months ago, you built some basic thing with what you had started learning. So with all of this lined up, I know it does seem a little bit simplistic, but I absolutely believe that if you take the steps outlined here, if you don't fall into the pitfalls from the previous slide, which are just kind of the opposites of these things, that you will almost definitely succeed in learning to program, in finding your first programming job, because at the end of the day, picking relevant skills, continuing to try are the most important things you can do. Even if you just did those two things, I think you would get there eventually. If you set some realistic expectations, you'll probably get there even more quickly and even more easily. And if you know that there's always more to learn, then you won't take it upon yourself to try and learn too much at once, to try and learn too much before you feel like you're ready to start applying for jobs or start building stuff. And again, even if you don't know very much at all, to start building stuff in the first place is going to show that you're a capable developer, or you're turning into a capable developer at least. So I hope that this gives you the confidence that you need to go out there and maybe, if you haven't looked at the job market yet, to at least pick some relevant stuff to learn about and to succeed in your journey in becoming a programmer. And if you're interested in a deeper dive into how to pick relevant skills or pick your first programming language, check out some of my other videos. Or even if you just wanted to learn a little bit more about how to learn effectively so that you can set realistic expectations without kind of burning yourself out, then I also have a video about learning how to learn. So check out some of my other stuff if you're interested, and I wish you the best of luck in your journey to become a programmer.